All right, welcome back. So now that we know about relative dating and geologic and absolute dating, and those things work together, and that helped us create a geologic time scale, let's go back through Earth's history to kind of just take a look at what it looked like and why we divided up the geologic time scale the way we did based on relative and absolute dating. All right. So just a different look at the geologic time scale. The geologic time scale is broken up into eons, which are the biggest chunks, and then eras, periods, and epochs. Okay, so let's break down each of those a little bit further. Epochs. So let's first talk about eons. Those are the biggest chunks of time. So all of move me a little bit. So all of Earth's history has been broken down into 4 eons. It's the biggest chunk. In the Hadean, I'm just in the way all over the place. In the Hadean eon, this is the time between Earth's creation and the age of the oldest rocks discovered. So we don't have any rock evidence. We know it was a molten ball, so therefore either rocks were melted and recycled, or if there was rocks formed due to plate tectonics, those that got recycled back into the mantle. So around 4 billion years is the oldest rock material that we have. So therefore, this Hadean time again is the time between Earth's creation and the oldest rocks. Since we have no rocks from there, we have no records. We don't know really what's going on. But Hadean, as in Hades, as in hell, it was a molten hot ball of hell on Earth. Then we have the Archean. So think archaic. This is roughly when single-celled life developed. Very archaic, very ancient, very original, basic life during the Archean. And so it took almost 1.5 billion years. This is in millions of years. So that would it's 1.5 billion years worth of time. And really only single-cell life developed here. So very archaic, very old life. Then in the proterozoic, multi-celled organisms and soft-bodied organisms finally first started to appear in the ocean. So these single-celled organisms finally evolved to multi-celled organisms. That's the proterozoic, prototype life. Think about that. And Phanerozoic, remember Phaner is the kind of a Latin prefix for visible. So we have abundant animal and plant life, abundant visible life. So about 541 million years ago, which started the Cambrian explosion, all of a sudden we get this explosion of life in the sea and then eventually onto land. As we get further and further into the semester, we will start back in time and we'll kind of go through geologic and biologic history all throughout. These first handful of units, 5, 6, 7 units, are all just understanding some of the processes going on, and then we can look at the actual evidence and how we can put the puzzle together that is Earth. All right, let's see, maybe I can move me back now. Okay, so the Hadean eon, again, think Hades, hell on Earth. It's molten ball of material. It cooled and condensed into rock, but any of that rock that may have existed, has been recycled back into the Earth. So the oldest rocks we have are about 4 billion years old. Then we get into the Archean, so archaic life, very archaic life, and Earth was still a very inhospitable place. Some of the first life to develop, these little kind of mushroom-shaped things, are actually colonies of bacteria called stromatolites. So that's kind of some of the first organisms that eventually developed. So very archaic life. And then we get into the proterozoic eon, so multi-celled organisms, soft-bodied stuff in the ocean, maybe some soft-bodied worms and jellyfish and things like that, but nothing really too crazy. And then starting around 441 million years ago, the Phanerozoic eon, now we get abundant life, things with bones. You get insects and reptiles and amphibians and plants and trees and all that stuff now moving on to land. So those are kind of the big chunks of eons. And then we now divide eons, specifically the Phanerozoic eon, into different eras. We have again, because Phanerozoic means visible life. So we have things that we can actually see, not just little single-celled organisms. So we can break it down into the Paleozoic era, which means ancient life, Mesozoic era, middle life, and Cenozoic, which means recent life. So we can look at these three big chunks because the most distinctive changes in fossils, and we'll touch more on this, I think, next unit or the unit after that, kind of the biggest change in the fossil record, we helped us divide up the Phanerozoic eon into these different eras. So big change in the fossil record, big change in the fossil record. So that's ancient life, middle life, recent life. So the Paleozoic era, mostly sea creatures, some amphibians, some things moving onto land, some insects, some trees and plants, not much on land. The abundant amount of life was really in the ocean. Things like trilobites and ammonites and other types of squids. And this is, what is that? Orthoceras, sorry. So most life is in the ocean in the Paleozoic era. We get some stuff transitioning into land. Then big change in the fossil record. Now we get a bunch of stuff on land. We get more plants and trees on land. So a little bit more diversity onto land. So we get the Mesozoic era. This is when the dinosaurs lived. There was other stuff. This is just when the dinosaurs lived. And then a big change in the fossil record. Dinosaurs died out. A number of other organisms died out as we get into the Cenozoic era. Which was dominated by mammals. Different kinds of mammals, but mammals nonetheless. Now we can further break up the eras into different geologic periods based on rock and fossil records to get a little bit more detailed instead of kind of just these bigger chunks. Periods in geology is oftentimes what we talk about the most. So the Cambrian period starts us off in the Paleozoic. Then we get the Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, Permian, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and then Paleogene and Neogene, sometimes referred to collectively as the Tertiary. And then we have the Quaternary. The Carboniferous is broken up sometimes into Mississippian and Pennsylvanian period, depending on the time scale you're looking at. So just smaller chunks to get a little bit more detailed in differences in geologic and biologic life throughout the period of the Earth. And then we can also further divide, let me move me back, periods into epochs. So because of the most recent life, and this is the closest stuff, up to about 66 billion years ago, we have better rock evidence, better fossil evidence, so better biologic evidence. So to get a little bit more detail with some of these periods, we can break them into epochs. And we play around with this a little bit in the unit, what was that, 3 lab. That's an introduction to geologic maps and stuff, and we'll continue that. So, but anyway, in any case, that's just kind of a quick breeze through Earth's history. Each one of these kind of chunks will serve as a different chunk of time, a different unit that we'll look at later on the semester. We'll look at the Hadean as a unit. We'll look in the Archean eon. We'll look in the proterozoic eon, geologic and life. And then we'll, instead of the Phanerozoic in general, I think we'll look at the Paleozoic era. We'll look at the geology, and then we'll also look at life. The geology of the Mesozoic and the life of Mesozoic. The geology of the Cenozoic and the life of the Cenozoic. So those will all be future units, distinctly different units, as we get into the second half of the semester. Again, these first 5, 6, 7 units are just laying the groundwork to understand the geology and the changes in biologic organisms we see throughout geologic time. So let's go ahead and stop here. When we come back, I believe it's the last unit, we're going to look at old stuff. So we're going to look at the oldest rocks on Earth, the oldest minerals on Earth, and then how the heck did we figure out the Earth is 4.5 plus billion years old. So let's pause here. When we come back, we'll look at some old stuff.